guys, I thought it would be fun to do another one of these something from the studio videos. I only did one before and it took me this long to get to a second one because January was just busy, 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 and then we had the flu here at our house too. So here I'm sharing with you a new altered book that I've started this year, which I love the size of this. The pages, it's signature sewn. The pages have a little gloss to them, but they're nice and thick, so they'll handle some mixed media pretty good, and especially those acrylic paints I like. And I'm going to do something with the cover eventually here too. But right now I started this spread just on one of the first pages and just moved some color and paint around one night kind of as my evening creative practice. And now I want to finish up the page. So one of the first things I was really excited to try out in the studio is these new gold Posca pens I ordered. If you use Posca pens, I don't know if these come in a set at all. They certainly don't come in the ones I've ordered, so I had to order them by themselves. I think I ordered them from Dick Blick perhaps, but these are so juicy, you guys. I loved these the minute I started using them on the page. They just, like Posca, all the other Posca pens, they flow really nicely, and the gold is just really, really shimmery and nice, which is always a little hard to see on videos, but I do recommend that Posca gold pen. When I do my creative practice in an altered book, I never know if I'm going to utilize any images that are on the page to begin with or not. Usually in some way it will inspire what happens on the page, but sometimes the whole darn page gets covered over. And you can see that figure on the left side of my spread there. When I started, I thought she was going to get totally covered over, and there was actually another figure or two in it. And I didn't take note of what the original art piece was or who did it, and I don't remember. But as I was moving the color around in that, I actually ended up really enjoying and liking that figure left on the page. And even at this point in the spread here, I wasn't totally sure if I was going to modify her a little bit or paint over her. But you'll kind of see how I work around her and with her on this spread as I'm finishing up. So there I moved to an acrylic paint. It's a Naples yellow. Looks kind of similar on the video to that gold I used, but it is a little bit different in person. It's more matte for sure. Doesn't have that metallic shimmer to it at all. And when I'm finishing up a page like this, when I start a page, I start it out pretty loosely for sure. I just like to move color. I like to let the color inspire me, pattern, shapes, move the color around, create areas on the page or little territories on the page, see what composition comes of it, and see what layers kind of happen from that process, from being really free with it and not getting too bent out of shape if colors mix or mingle, if things aren't perfect on the edges or what have you. And then when I come back in, I start to do things like touch up edges, for instance, if I like a particular shape, or sometimes I'll go over areas, a second time or a third time even to make the color more opaque, to make the area more pronounced, what have you. Or I'll do things like I did with that Naples yellow on that ochre kind of color there, where I added that Naples yellow and blended it up just to give it a little bit of a highlight and left some of that ochre on the edge of that little crooked line. And then I'll take a lot of my pens, gel pens or paint pens, and I'll do some doodles, I'll do outlining, I'll do dots, I'll do lines, I'll do more shapes, just kind of what feels playful and fun to what is happening on the page, what the painting itself wants. And so I feel like, and if you've worked with any of my classes, it's kind of like a call and response, between you and the page when you work in this sort of intuitive fashion as you start things out, and then as the painting itself begins to take on a life. Or often, in my case, I often think of these spreads that I do, they end up like little worlds or dreamscapes. And so at a certain point, it becomes about kind of honoring that little world and what it wants to become by those initial decisions I made as I was moving color, pretty freely and following my intuition and really kind of like my joy or my curiosity with the colors. I had given myself a challenge with this spread, and challenges are always great working in any creative practice. You need to keep it fresh, or you're going to find yourself just doing things that you're incredibly comfortable with. I certainly know that to be true for me, and certainly true for a lot of my students and participants and things that I offer. And one of the things, one of my comfort zones, one of my comfort fallback things is the color blue. And so when I started this page, I started it with the intention that I was not going to allow myself to use blue in this spread at all. And so from there, I started to just grab colors, and then this is what I ended up with these kind of ochres and golds and pinks and little touches of reds and purples and some of that that green, what do they call that? Yeah, phthalocyanine green, right? So I started the page with a mix of some different acrylics, of course, some Liquitex basics, I think, some craft paints. I've been excited to use and try, and I use just a few colors on this page, of the Dick Blick matte acrylics, which are really great for journaling. I've heard good things about them, and I'm pleased. They're good for journals because the pages don't stick if you use them. And then you see me using a combination. I'm jumping all around using stuff you've probably noticed. Gel pens, Posca pens, also Inktense pencils, and then going back to different acrylic paints. That one there, I think I just used was a Martha Stewart acrylic or something like that. And then I'll use watercolors too sometimes. I also did use the Derwent Inktense blocks at one point on the first night that I worked on this spread. And then those little round things I'm painting right there, I used iridescent Liquitex fluid over top of it to give them a little bit of a sheen as well. Again, it's another thing that's kind of harder to see in the video, but I like to use a combination, personally, of matte and shiny surfaced paints and pens, because it creates a certain kind of texture in its own right and how the light plays with a page when you're looking at it, for instance, gives it this whole other dimension that's really interesting, I find. You know, one of the things I really liked about this page, it became an intentional decision for me, was how the figure itself, how she kind of blends in a lot. You know, this is a busy page. There's a lot going on. And a lot of my pages are like that. But I didn't, you could make her pop in different ways, using different colors around her, doing whatever. There's lots of ways to make different areas of your page pop. And I'm sure a lot of you know about that and have experimented. But I really, for this particular page, just on a kind of a conceptual level almost, I liked her just kind of being in the environment and not being necessarily the focal point. And then that said, I actually had this impulse to kind of use that little thing that she's holding, which I don't remember what it was in the original painting. It might have been like a staff or something, but I wanted to make it a little bit of some sort of implied torch, and that's what I ended up doing. Here, you'll see me finishing up here toward the end of the page, but as I painted it, it also became interesting to me personally, on a personal level. Our pages kind of speak to us. It also reminded me of a paintbrush, like a really large paintbrush, as if she were holding it like a staff or something. And I just love that, because this whole journal, this new altered book journal for this year, really represented to me something I noticed when I was sick, which is, you do a lot of reflecting when you are laying on the couch with the flu for a week. And I really wanted to recommit to my own personal painting practice. So, not just the practices and processes and things I demo in my classes, or the activities and invitations I give to my participants and that sort of thing, but something that has no agenda except to be for me, to be free, to be about that intuitive response wherever I'm at, that is just what it is going to be. And so it's felt really good to make that commitment. And somehow on this page, her kind of just being in that environment and the way she is, and the way that little torch thing on the left-hand side that she's holding kind of reminded me of a paintbrush, whether it does for anybody else or not. And then the little starred dots around her, and the way she's looking down at those kind of white orbs that are floating toward what reminds me of a moon or some other sort of circular orb on that right side. It reminds me of the astrology work I'm doing and teaching others about. And then the freedom of the paint on this page, and the color and the line and that, and the whole approach, it just felt really gratifying, I guess, and kind of cathartic for where I'm at in my personal place in the creative process, to see a combination of art and astrology and to feel, I know it's very much also has some messages about my spiritual journey that I'm on right now. I'm working on a spiritual autobiography with a group I'm in, and also it's always been healing for me. And so when I allow there to be space in my time, in my day, and also space in my practice for pages that are simply for me, that are simply for whatever comes out of it, without over analyzing it, without looking for too much meaning, and just letting it become what it wants to become. There's a meaning that reveals itself through that, and there's a medicine that I need. And so this little page, it became what it wanted to become, and in the end it kind of gave me a little bit of that insight and a reminder of that, and that's what it will continue to be as I move forward in this altered book and in my painting practice this year, 2018. So there I'm finishing up. I used my Inktenses. I love using Inktenses over acrylics to add shading and that sort of thing. It can really make little shapes and that kind of pop. Or little touches of yellow like I was doing there can make areas just kind of glow. And then I decided it was pretty close to done here.